Welcome everybody to the last day of September's Chesapeake Rotary Club meeting. Appreciate everyone being here today. I do not see any of my typical go-to prayer folks, so everybody bow your head. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you very much for the food that is nourishing our bodies today. We wish you give your healing strength to those in need, especially during this very troubling time in our country and in the world. Please give your healing strength to those who request it, whether it be from any illnesses, any sadness in the world, any sickness. Heal those that can be healed and give strength to those to carry on for those who lose loved ones during this tragic time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Can I ask Chuck, who's going to come up here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please join the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Marcelo, can I have you lead us in the four-way test, please?
Sure. The four-way test is a thing, say, or do.
First, is it true? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Yeah, we'll have fun. All right. If I could ask our Sergeant at Arms, Chuck Wilson, come on.
Welcome, everyone. Good group here today. Very good. And the food, excellent, by the way. Very good. We have some guests. See, Janet, you have 3 guests. Yes, welcome. Thank you. All right. Happy Bucks. Do we have some Happy Bucks out here? Anyone? Okay. Well, I have one. I'm happy to be feeling much better. I had surgery, hernia surgery on Friday. I should have had probably 10 years ago, and I think it's going to be great, but I ended up with some complications over the weekend that had me down really bad. But getting back on top. All right, another Happy Month. I hear a collective cheer out there from a lot of folks.
Happy to be here and happy to be building very together the other president like that. And Susanna, thank you guys.
Gathering dollars. All right. Anyone else? Back to our president.
Thank you very much, Chuck. Especially for our guests who are here today, thank you for being here. We hope that you will think about possibly joining us. We're always looking for new members in the Chesapeake Rotary Club. And that's just to let everybody else know, if you have anybody you are interested in bringing as a guest who may be interested in joining the club, we certainly encourage you to do so. If I can now get Candy Waller to come up here and introduce our guest speaker for us.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Our speaker today is Michael Berlucci. He is the Community and Governmental Relations Manager for the Chrysler Museum of Art. That's Chrysler Museum. And he creates and implements educational and community partnerships. He's a graduate of George Mason University, the Sorensen Institute for Political Leadership at UVA, and the Civic Leadership Institute. In 2005, he was recognized by Inside Business as one of their top 40 under 40, and by the Equity Virginia as an outstanding Virginian. He's served on a lot of boards and organizations, and he is a member of the Chesapeake City Council, and I will tell you, Virginia Beach. Oh, I'm sorry. The Virginia Beach City Council. And in case any of you out there are saying, I hate museums, why do people stand around and look at old paintings and ugly statues, blah, blah, blah. Well, then you have not been to the Chrysler recently. I will tell you, a couple of years ago, they had a phenomenal exhibit on the Harley Davidson. I mean, it was like motorcycles and all kinds. I mean, it was the history of it. It was amazing. Maybe about a year ago, they had Lalique exhibit, and you're probably saying, who in the heck is that? He is a very famous glass maker. And but in the exhibit, they had these incredible hood ornaments for very expensive cars. So they were very interesting. So there's been a lot of very interesting things there, so I really encourage you to go and see. Michael.
Trying to get that last bite of carrot cake now. Well, good afternoon. My name is Michael Berlucci, and I'm just really thrilled to be here. I want to thank Candy for the invitation, and I also want to thank especially Chuck and John for helping me get this technology together, because I showed up with the Mac and substandard connectors and presentation on a drive, and they served you all and represented you very well to get this done, and I appreciate it. So as Candy mentioned, I work for the Chrysler Museum of Art, where I serve as the manager of community and government relations, and I've worked at the Chrysler Museum for almost 10 years. And it's been an extraordinary place to work, and I feel very passionately that it's a community treasure. It's a place that's an amenity for Hampton Roads, all cities of Hampton Roads, and we really serve the region. So what I'd like to do today is just give you a glimpse about a little bit of the history of the museum, which I think is very interesting, some of what our past has been, as well as what you will find today, and just a glimpse of what we have coming into the future, and then we'll have some time, hopefully, for some questions and dialogue. But it's really my pleasure to share with you some of the programs in the collection about the Chrysler, because it's such a wonderful institution. So the museum was created in 1933 as the Norfolk Museum of Arts and Sciences. And you can see that just the beginnings of construction where we currently sit, which is on the Hague in downtown Norfolk, right on the border of Ghent in downtown Norfolk. The museum was founded by a group of female educators who recognized that our region did not have a cultural institution, and that if we were going to make forward progress and to become a region that was be on par with our competitors, that we would need to have a cultural resource and an educational institution. And at that time, they pulled resources together and founded the Norfolk Museum of Arts and Sciences. And it existed as such until 1971, when Walter Chrysler Jr. entered the picture. But it was a collection of modest collection, somewhat respectable and modest collecting of art objects, but also was focused on the natural sciences. And so up until the 70s, you could come into what's now known as the Chrysler Museum and see taxidermied animals. Some of you who grew up here may remember visiting the museum and seeing that. And this is just a representation of really a beautiful painting by an American Impressionist that was part of our collection. This was created by Helen Turner. And so the museum was beginning to collect in the arts, but really with limited resources, wasn't able to assemble a really meaningful collection until 1971 when Walter Chrysler Jr. arrived. And Chrysler Jr. was the son of Walter Chrysler, who of course founded the Chrysler Automotive Company. And he wasn't interested in the car business at all. He spent a little bit of time as president of the Chrysler building in New York City and didn't really do that well there either. His passion was collecting art, and that's what he was interested in. And he became the most preeminent private collector of his generation, and he had really virtually limitless resources with which to collect, and that's why he was able to assemble such an impressive collection. And I like to tell the story that one of his first major purchases was a small Renoir drawing. It was a female nude that he acquired when he was in France on a summer vacation when he was 14 years old. And when he returned to his boarding school in New York or Massachusetts or whatever fancy boarding school he attended, the headmaster there found the Renoir drawing to be obscene and ripped it up and destroyed it. And that was his first major purchase. And Chrysler always had an eye for collecting. He was voracious in his collecting appetite even from a young age, and he assembled ultimately a collection of more than 30,000 objects, spanning the course of human history from ancient objects all the way through contemporary works of art. And Chrysler was looking for a partner, a municipal partner with which he could do business. And he had a museum called the Chrysler Museum of Art in Provincetown, Massachusetts. It was in an old church, and he had outgrown the space. And so he was searching for a municipal partner that would commit to providing the space to house the collection and ongoing administrative support to maintain the operations of the museum, and then he would bring the art. And it was difficult. Massachusetts, Provincetown wasn't interested in playing ball with him. He shopped it around to some other cities, and his wife, Jean Outland Chrysler, was from Norfolk and went to school, who had grown up with the mayor at the time, Roy Martin. And so she called her old friend Roy and said, you know, my husband's interested in bringing this collection. Would Norfolk be interested in you know, whatever, giving it a home? And he said, make a long story short, lots of negotiation. And I think it's really a credit to Mayor Martin and members of the Norfolk City Council and civic leaders at the time that they had the vision to say, yes, this would be a great thing for our city and for our Hampton Roads community. If you'll bring this world-famous collection, we'll support it. We've got a building, we'll expand it, and we'll invest in it over time. And that really ignited cultural life in Hampton Roads. The Chrysler is widely regarded as sort of a keystone cultural institution. And that was really because of the leadership of Mayor Martin, Walter Chrysler Jr., Jean Outland, and a group of civic leaders. And so the museum really expanded, and you can see that it took on a number of forms, some of which you may be familiar and some you may not. You can see this sort of contemporary brutalist style that was present in the 70s and 80s, which I think is sort of cool, but didn't really match the Italianate exterior. And so it took on a number of forms, continued to grow and expand. And then ultimately, with Chrysler's gift and toward the end of his life, the museum generated the exterior and the branding that we're familiar with today. So when you visit today, you'll see a number of things. We renovated the building in 2014, major expansion and renovation. Even though, if you compare the two photos I just showed you, they look very close to the same, but there are really some really substantial differences. First is that we added gallery space to the front. We moved the HVAC system from the basement to the roof, which is very important in an area that floods and where you need to maintain constant temperature and humidity. And we also improved accessibility. You can see that there are ramps on the front of the building, and for the first time ever, people who are experiencing issues with mobility can enter the front door, which is a simple but important gesture and element of hospitality that we're very proud of. In fact, when we reopened in 2014 after being closed for a year and a half, one of our first visitors was in a wheelchair, and she had visited the museum her entire life and was crying because it was the first time she'd ever been through the front doors. So we're really proud of that and all the enhancements we made in the 2014 renovation. And of course, the Chrysler is known as a place that welcomes everyone, and it's really important that we welcome families and young people and children, and we're the custodians of these important cultural objects, and they are delicate in some cases, and we want to maintain and preserve them for future generations. But we also want to make sure that young people can enjoy them, and that's one point I'd like to emphasize. Bring your children and bring your grandchildren to the museum. We have a really robust school program, which unfortunately I'm sorry to say because of COVID we're not able to fully realize and enjoy, but we have partnerships with local school divisions, including in Chesapeake, where we use our Egypt and China collection to enhance and just contribute to the SOL learning program. So I can't think of the grade in Chesapeake. I know it's every fourth grader in Norfolk, and it's an elementary school age in Chesapeake. Every student comes to look at our Egypt and China exhibits as part of their SOL programs, and we're really proud of that. So, and then in Virginia Beach, we have a separate program to help identify gifted and talented students from minority communities in Title I schools. So we're always partnering with our local school divisions to welcome students. We have tens of thousands who normally visit, and I have to say our galleries are so quiet, they're really too quiet during the week. We normally have school students coming through constantly, and if you've ever visited during the week, it's really, really loud, but it's a good noise, and we all miss it at the museum. But I'm hopeful in the future, I'm sure we'll be able to welcome them back. A couple of shameless plugs. We have a really wonderful restaurant as well as museum shop. And unfortunately, the restaurant is closed now except for everything but grab and go. But when we do reopen, I want to encourage you to consider coming. If not for the art, just to stop in our restaurant. It's a really great place to have lunch. But of course, the focus and the treasure about the Chrysler is our collection. And that's largely thanks to Walter Chrysler Jr. And we continue to collect and acquire works of art even now. But the famous art critic from the New York Times once noted the Chrysler boasts objects that any museum in the world would kill for, and that's really true. We loan objects to exhibitions all around the world, and at any given time, you could see a map with objects from the Chrysler Museum all over the world, in Australia, China, Japan, France. In fact, we just loaned our Degas painting to the Musée d'Orsay, which is the keystone, most important museum for Impressionist painters. And they wanted our Degas. You'd think they'd have enough, but they wanted ours. And so that's really cool, and it's something that's good for the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's good for the city of Norfolk, and it's good for all cities in Hampton Roads that were represented on the global stage because of this amazing collection. So we might not have 15 of your famous, your favorite famous painters' works on view, but we generally have a good representation from really the arc of art history, at least one. So I'm just gonna kind of move through some of these. This is just a glimpse of what you might see in the galleries when you visit. And you can see the depth and breadth of Chrysler's collecting. He was very famous for collecting glass, and that's a really important part of our collection. We're widely regarded to have one of the finest collections of glass in the country, in the world. And that's one of the reasons we have a glass studio, which I'll talk about in a moment. Chrysler was also very interested in European old master painting, so you'll see a lot of those. In fact, there's this famous story. There's a lot of great anecdotes about Walter Chrysler. I think he was a real character. In fact, I have his FBI file in my office, which is really a great read. I think most people in the 50s had FBI files, but especially if you were wealthy like Chrysler, but it was really interesting. So, and this wasn't in the file, but he really collected a lot of Picasso paintings and was friends with Pablo Picasso, and then they had a falling out. And so he sold all the Picassos and bought European old master paintings. So we have a lot of this European painting as a result of his argument with Picasso about the authenticity of one painting. Also very strong in American painting and sculpture. This This is one of my favorite paintings. It's Thomas Cole. It's really a monumental painting. If you've been to the museum, you might remember it. It's a huge painting, probably, I don't know, close to as big as all of these banners. I mean, it's a really, really large painting, and it's really great. And then I'm just sort of moving through to give you a glimpse. You can see some of your favorites represented in these works. And then in 2011, we opened a glass studio, and this was to further inform about the material properties of glass in creating art. It was established in an old bank building, historically across the street from the museum, and I think this is a great use from a bank, which we know are so common, and they're on practically every street corner, to a working glass studio just across the street from the museum. And we're an educational institution, so we're not built to create things to sell, or we do have a nice gift shop, as I mentioned, but this studio is all about teaching. It's teaching people about the art of glass making. You can come and take a class yourself, bring your family, and or see performance, and it's a really, really remarkable place. We offer free demos every day at noon. And then we also have, and you may have seen, I think this photo actually was taken at the Chesapeake Jubilee. This is our mobile glass studio. So it's a glass shop on a trailer, and we take that to festivals and community events, and it's always a really, really big hit to see live glass blowing. We also operate the Moses Myers House, which is located just adjacent to MacArthur Center Mall, although the Myers House was there first. It was built in 1795 and is one of the best examples of a federal-style townhome in the country. And what's really special about this house is that a couple of things. One is that the Myers family were the only family to ever occupy the home from the late 1790s all the way through the 1930s, when the home was transferred to the city of Norfolk as a historic house. So the same family lived there, and as a result, over 70% of the objects inside the house are original to the home. And that's very rare for those of you who are historic home lovers. When you visit historic houses, they're often restored. They tell the story of maybe the person who bought it or whatever, but you don't see the original furnishings, and you certainly don't see something like you do in this photo. Above those two doorways are paintings by Stuart Gilbert, the very famous American portraitist who made the image of George Washington that we see on the dollar bill, and many other of our founding fathers and early Americans. And you know the story about Dolly Madison famously rolling up the portrait of Washington before the British burned the White House. That was Gilbert Stuart, and this is the only place you're going to find them in their original context other than the White House. So, a couple of things we have coming up. We had to pivot our plans. We're planning a really ambitious exhibition this fall. Summer and fall, by an artist from the Netherlands. And we had budget shortfalls and challenges with COVID, and we weren't able to present that show. So we had to come up with a new plan, and we thought this would be a really appropriate time to present an exhibition about community connections, how we relate to each other as humans. Originally, we were thinking about how COVID has changed the way we connect as family members, neighbors, community members, and then of course the events surrounding George Floyd, murder, and all the racial tension and the related discussions caused us to think about how we can try to build some unity and some togetherness, and that's really what this show is all about. It's called Come Together Right Now, and it's an exhibition of more than 100 works of art drawn from our collection that are focused on a few central themes about how we relate to each other as humans, including activities, celebrations, demonstrations, love, and family. So I think it's going to be a really great show, and it's going to showcase works of art from our collection over the course of human history. And you can just see a few of the works that will be on view. And then next year, we're presenting a show called Americans in Spain, and I think this is going to be a great show too. We're pretty excited about it, and it's an exhibition about American painters who were living in Spain from 1820 to 1920. It was a period of time when there was a lot of interest from American painters in particular in Spanish life and culture, which was, I think we all agree, even now remains fascinating. There was a lot of cultures converging in Spain, and Americans were really interested in how that was playing out in that as a subject matter. So we're looking forward to that. And then next summer, we're presenting a show called Alma Thomas, Everything is Beautiful. Alma Thomas was a female painter who was born in rural Georgia and lived in D.C. And this is an example of her work, which is a sort of a painting collage. And she was widely regarded as an artist who was making a lot of contributions to art historical life, and whose work has been underrepresented and understudied for many years, in part because she was a woman, maybe because she was a woman of color, like a lot of artists who contributed much are underappreciated and underrepresented. So this is new scholarship about an artist whose contributions are vast. So with that, I just really want to simply invite you to visit the museum. We're free, always, and we have a lot to see, a lot to enjoy, no matter your level of interest, whether you're interested in watching art created at our glass studio, visiting a historic home, enjoying ancient art or European old master paintings, everything to contemporary, and on the newest cutting edge of art scholarship. There's something for you and your family there, and I will invite you to come and welcome you to enjoy this great treasure. And it's been really nice to speak with you this morning or this afternoon and share a little bit about what we have going on. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for a delicious lunch, and I hope you all have a great day. Yes, sir.
So how do you get your funding? Was there a foundation set up by the Chryslers or donations? How do you get your funding?
Good question, and his question was, how do we get our funding? Now, it's a particularly timely question because, like every organization, particularly nonprofit, this is a really difficult time for groups because of COVID and the budget impacts all that has. We have a budget that's pretty much sliced into thirds, with one small distinction which I'll mention, but about a third of our revenue comes from the city of Norfolk in that operating support that I mentioned. About 1/3 comes from charitable donations from individuals and corporations. And then I'd say one slice of that, small slice of that pie, that 1/3, comes from earned income from weddings and corporate events and our gift shop. So there's one piece of that third is in that earned, what we call earned income. And then the other third is revenue from investments. So we have about an $80 million endowment, and we're fortunate to receive revenue from that, which helps to offset our operating costs. We're private, even though the city of Norfolk owns the building itself. We're a private nonprofit, so we receive operating support from the city of Norfolk, but I work for a private institution, and we're not a city agency.
Yeah, do you still have docent-run tours?
We do. Thanks. Great question. We have a wonderful group of docents, about more than 100, who volunteer their time. Many are retired educators or people who love art, and we have a very, very rigorous and robust training program. And our docents are responsible. You saw them in the photos with the school children. We also have a gallery talk every day at 2 p.m. that's free and led by a docent. And you can also visit and see the glass studio every day at noon. There's a free demo. But we have a wonderful group of docents, men and women who volunteer their time and expertise to share interpretation about art objects. Sometimes they're scheduled in terms of what is the topic, and then others is kind of their choice. And those are some of the most fun ones, because you always pull out what interests them and you learn something every time. Yes, sir.
What percentage of your collections are actually on exhibit versus storage?
So his question was, what percentage is on view at any given time? About 1/3. So we have a lot of objects in storage. That's a whole, really, I mean, that could be a presentation just in itself, because we have our whatever, blockbuster pieces, you know, the ones that we always have to show. Everyone wants to see them and love them. Then we have sometimes curator chosen works of art that for a variety of reasons they think enhance interpretation or tell a new story, and so those will be on view. And then we have storage, both inside the building and an off-site storage place. But we're also thinking about constantly how we're collecting, and we're trying to choose objects that fit into our collection and somehow enhance the interpretation of what we have. For example, we're not bringing a lot of new ancient objects into the, we're not buying Egyptian antiquities, that type of thing. We're trying to bring in a lot of contemporary art, works of art that reflect the entire canon of art history and the contributions of men, women, people of color, that it's more representative of all the people who are working as artists. And then we have a lot of works on paper, and then we have some things that don't fit in. In fact, we just de-accessioned, and I wasn't part of this, but we just moved a variety. We had some objects from the Confederacy and from the Civil War, and things that were more historical than they were art, that for whatever reason were conveyed to the museum, that we transferred to history museums so that they could be better interpreted and it would fit their mission better than ours. So we're constantly in those kind of dialogue and discussion about what fits in and how we can use it to teach and enhance life, cultural life in our region. Yes, ma'am.
Michael, do you ever have any fundraising events there at the museum to help with revenue?
We do. She asked about fundraising. Our principal source of fundraising, it comes from museum membership. And so we're always, those of you who are members, if you are, we very much appreciate that. Household membership is $75. And it's really an act of philanthropy because admission is free. But it's a little bit more than an act of philanthropy because you receive discounts to some studio classes, special invitations, and also you get our calendar so you know what's going on. We have a lot of events for major donors and corporate sponsors, and if any of you would like any information about that, I'd be very happy to share it with you. But I think the principal focus of our fundraising is about membership, and that really drives charitable giving for us. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you, and I really appreciate the invitation and hope you'll consider visiting soon. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Michael. We appreciate you having you here today, you coming in and sharing your insights about the museum. I, for one, have not been in quite a while, but do look forward to showing up in the near future, bringing my kids who have never been as well. So hopefully it'll be a nice eye-opening experience for them. Anyway, next Wednesday is our club day, followed by our board meeting immediately thereafter at 1 o'clock. Pretty important board meeting. If any regular members want to show up, that would be fine as well, but certainly encourage all the board to attend. And if there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, we adjourn.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, no problem. Take time. So there is one thing. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just bring that up.
Yeah.
So that would be, I mean, hopefully we'll find out how we book the weekend.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys do?
We do. It's been a while. $1,800 a day. It's not cheap. Well, we may be able to work with you on it.
Okay. In the best time, people have done that, trying to figure out a way to put this and not sound gross, but is there a point that they can't organize it for money, maybe they, I don't know how.
Well,
I mean, it's
sometimes.
purely a display, right? I mean, you're not
Right.
taking people in and saying, I'm just a demonstration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's explore.
Okay. All right. I'll shoot you an email. All right.
But I mean, we try to at least cover that cost. I mean, that's the.
I'm sure. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's it. Right. I get it. Okay. I'll shoot you an email.
Yeah, please.
Great. Thank you.
Interested in, probing, something along that
Oh,
line?
no.
Yeah, that could be really nice. That's true. That's true. Glass getting that mobile glass here from the air. That would be a great thing. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, he said he didn't look at his price. They got to pay at least $1,500. Cool, man. All right.
Okay.